Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir.
Well, I always relate everything back to music for some reason. Now, full disclosure, my musical ability extends to the ability to hear a door slam, according to you. My best friend when I was a high school teacher was the band director, and he assessed my musical ability that way. So, but my my metaphor for that is um, Jackson Brown. The only time that seems too short is the time we get to play. That's kind of the way I am about our time together in teaching. That just flies by. Everything else, I tend to sit and do all the other stuff that I do just so that I can get to be with students and teach a little bit. That's the reward time for me. Um, and
I
so when I tell people that I am excited to be here, it's somewhat facetious, but it really isn't. It's the time that I enjoy the most. And so let's see.
when I started the EDCI program, that's what I said I wanted to do was be a professor. I've not made it there yet. God is traveling me down a totally different path that I was not ready for.
Yeah, yeah, but you know, life takes different turns. But as long as you have a clear vision of what that path is, that there's no timeline. You'll get there at some point.
Yes, sir.
And so that's what's important is that you get there. It's the journey along the way. It's not the destination, it's the journey along the way. So at least it is for me.
It has definitely been a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And so um, you know, the thing that I actually had this pulled up. You never know what you're going to need when you start these things. I actually had this pulled up this morning, and this is relevant to you. Let me send myself this email.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Got it. That was me emailing myself. I had a couple of things, but back to Jessica. I have three rules for teaching. I'm not smart enough to have more than that, but I do have three, and it speaks to what you're doing right now. Um, and that email's for you too, by the way, Jessica. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm having a senior moment here, but my three rules of teaching are you got to love the students and care for them. That'll speak to diversity, inclusion, and all those things. And you got to have a theoretical framework. Knowles and Schlechte are my two for teaching adults. If you're doing K-12, it's Marzano, high yield strategies. But number three is you got to know your content. And the notion of becoming a university professor of some sort is that you got to know something. And it can't just be that you read it. Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Beth. You can't have just read it. You have to have sat in the seats and lived it. You have to share those experiences, and you have to teach through the lens of your experience when you get to the university level. And so you're sitting in the seats right now. You're building toward that time when you get to the university, and you can speak about in our business, it's a clinical business. It's not a theoretical business. Um, you it does no good to get university if you don't know anything or if you've not lived anything. I mean, adults can read the same as you.
Hmm.
They it's all about the experiences that you've had. when you get to the university level, I think, in order to be successful. Now, for whatever reason, and I'm just as surprised as you are. I was on the panel last week at the faculty assembly, and they had three folks. We were up on the stage that I thought it was going to be more intimate, but it was for the whole faculty. But I spoke to retention and uh, teaching adults and retention. How do you retain those? But I spoke from not only my experience over the last 13 years working with adults at Gardner Webb, but the 32 years that I did before that. I didn't speak, I didn't get up and read something, or I didn't get up and talk about something I'd read or theoretically or whatever. I spoke from my heart about my experiences in my 45 years in the business. This is my 45th year. You don't have to be as old as me, but you've got to sit in some seats and you've got to learn things through experience and not just having read them. Yes, I think your theoretical framework has to be strong. You have to read the theories to know what to do, but you have to have done it and experienced it if you want to be successful at the university level. I don't care if you're teaching undergraduates or graduates, it doesn't matter. You have to have some experience with your content. So you're sitting in the seats right now. So you're working toward that, whether it's immediate or whether you can see a direct connection or not, you are building toward that. And that's a good thing. Let me share my screen. Good morning, everybody. We'll start with our devotional, but before I do, I want to share a couple of pictures. I'm having a senior moment. I can't find Razan's picture. Let me see if I can look one more time quickly and see if I can find Razan. I told you she's one of my favorite doctoral students ever. I've got a picture of me and her here somewhere, but you know me, I can't find anything on my phone. I got a new phone this spring and I'm still trying to find all the different things that are on it. I'm going to spend 30 more seconds and then we're going to get to our content. Let me see. Let's roll. There we go. I knew I could find it if I wasted everybody's time long enough. All right. There it comes. So am I screen sharing? And I'm recording too. All right. So the first one that I've got here, let's see. All right. So that's Winter Goodson. That was us last December. You don't know anybody who's had a tough road in their life as Winter has, and she made it through. Now, Beth, you've already finished. You were at graduation. So I'm guessing that Jessica, Siobhan, and Corey, y'all are still in process. Jessica, you finished?
I finished.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Corey and Siobhan, you two still in process?
Yes, we just finished up our classwork.
Excellent.
So yeah, just dissertation left.
Yep. Excellent. So this lady on the screen, she was one of my ED. She's from originally from the St. Paul, Red Springs area, where Jessica is now. I've got some things to follow up. And we were talking about Dr. Stedman yesterday. I've got a picture of him here too. Let's see. This is Danny. He was principal at Red Springs, and Winter was one of his students. And Winter, would not mind me sharing the story, but the story, our devotional today is about being a servant leader. And that's caring about others and putting them in front of you. Winter Goodson, the lady I just showed you, That's Razan. I'll get her in a minute. Came to the high school at 14 years old, homeless and pregnant. And Danny Sedman saved her. And he gave her to me 10 years or more ago in Goldsboro. She's now a principal in Goldsboro, but she was with us through her master's program and her doctoral programs. But the notion here is not what I did, it's what Danny did, because he's as good a Christian man as I've ever met in my life. And so your faith, if you're a servant leader, your faith leads you to not focus on yourself, but to focus on others, to make them a priority in life. So I'm asked all the time, Dale, you talk about servant leadership. What is servant leadership? Well, servant leadership is putting others before yourself. That's the notion. Danny took this 14-year-old homeless pregnant girl and brought her into his own home and saved her, because it was more important to than the job or him or his comfort. As you can see, she's a person of color. But she had no community in that, she was mixed. In that part of the world, it's black, white, and other, especially back in that time. She's Lumbee Indian and mixed with all three races and had no community, but Danny didn't care. He took her in anyway. That's what we're talking about, being a servant leader. And Winter exemplifies that. Also, when we talk about your faith, it doesn't matter what your faith is. One of my favorite doctoral students ever, Razan Almani. Razan is Jordanian and Muslim, but she's as fine a person as I've ever met in my life, because her faith is strong. And I've never met a more servant-focused leader either, in terms of she's always thinking of somebody other than herself. And so I'm asked, and so I'll pull this one up real quick. And this is from our devotional that's actually in there. And I want to highlight some things, then I want to do some to-dos. One misconception about servant leaders: they're weak. They're actually strong. They're courageous. They promote others rather than themselves. And it talks about the trap you get into as a self-serving leader. You serve yourself rather than others. You don't look out for the organization or for its participants. You only look out for yourself. You can't admit mistakes. Servant leaders are clear about their purpose, vision, and values. There's things that are non-negotiable. So this is the tenets of servant leadership. And so what I put together, which is, Jessica is just living it now. Here are the things that, as you transition into a leadership role, here are the things that I think, and I use first faculty meeting, because we're in the school business. The first faculty meeting for a new administrator who is a servant leader, what would be the things that you would do by the time you got to that first faculty meeting? I'm always, I'm a clinical person. I'm a practitioner. So here's Dale's top 10 for the first faculty meeting, if you are a servant leader or aspire to be. Know everybody's name and what they do. That's important. Again, the focus is on them and not on you. If you can't know their names, move around the room and ask them who they are, ask them to introduce themselves. Set the focus immediately that you're here to serve them and you want to know them and who they are. Get an early win, present something positive to staff. That's simply to establish. It doesn't have to be anything big, but it has to. You have to establish that the win is not for you. The win is for them. That you're interested in that they're successful. Number one job of a leader when they hire somebody or they take a job where they assume the leadership of people is to make those people successful, not yourself successful. Your number one job is to make them successful. Give a quick overview of who you are and your professional experience. They don't care about your degrees. They want to know what you've done, and make it quick. Don't make it about yourself, but share with them that you're there to help them and that you have experience in that. Volunteer for something nobody else wants to do. Lend a hand, do as I do. Present the opening of school plan and be conversant if your principal will let you. Again, I'm one of you. I'm here to serve you. I know I'm, you know, folks, you're only new until lunchtime of the first day. After that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Let me say that again. You're only new till lunchtime of the first day. That's the only time you get to be new. After that, they expect you to be there to facilitate them. This notion of, well, I'm new, I don't know, that's not acceptable. Not for a servant leader. Smile and laugh at the appropriate times. Make that emotional connection with people. Ask questions and take notes. When I was a high school principal, and I had 6 APs, 2 admins, and a secretary, we all carried pads in our pocket so that we wrote our little list of to-dos down every day. But also, I'd have my pad when somebody asked me something. I have mine. I carry these now. Write it down. If you can't remember it, write it down. Write it down anyway, and follow up. That's what people want to see. That you don't just and then go on about your business. Carry that pad. Take notes. Follow up on the things that with the people that you're serving. Always be sure to recognize someone for something positive you've seen. Be specific. Don't just say, I like, you know, Joe's doing a good job. Well, what do you mean? That's disingenuous. Speak specifically to something you've seen that's positive. Servant leaders don't complain or seem worried about being being ready for the opening of school. Buses will run and kids will show up whether you're ready or not. You know, if you panic, they will. Servant leaders understand that. That's about them, not about you. And that goes to number 10. Don't mention how hard you're working or how busy you are. That's the expectation for servant leaders. So those are my top 10. If you are a servant leader moving, transitioning into a leadership role, and it's school based because that's who we are and what we do is school. But you know, when every time I do the devotional, it got to the point where, well, Dale, you know, that's all well and good. It's, you know, those wonderful platitudes, but how does that translate into me as an emerging leader? That's what this list is about. One of my more prized now, full disclosure, I am a Baptist. That doesn't mean you have to be, or that you have to, you know, be of the Christian faith or be of any particular faith, but have one. That's the notion here is your servant leadership emanates from your faith, because all faiths are about serving. And so whatever that is, this particular Bible, my everyday Bible, was given to me. It says right here, this Bible was given to me in the Baptist church. You know, when you out in the rural areas, especially in North and South Carolina, in the Baptist church, they used to have a group, you know, when you got to about middle school or middle school aged, rural ambassadors, which was, you know, kind of like the Boy Scouts, I guess, for Baptist kids. But anyway, this Bible was given to me when I was a middle schooler. It says it was given to me at 11 a.m. on February the 13th, 1966. And so I still carry this every day. This stays with me every day. I don't read it as much as I ought to. I try to read it every day. But be a person, if you're whatever your faith is, practice that faith. Don't just, it's not something that you just say, I'm this. You got to be practicing this. So whatever your faith is, live it, is the point. So I'll close our 15 minutes is up. So I'll close with our prayer this morning. This is a Catholic prayer, by the way, and it's one of my favorites. It's about leadership. As you know, Gardner Webb's motto is Pro Deo et Humanitate, service for God and humanity. So our prayer, our closing prayer for our devotional this morning is it's called Let Me Serve You. It's St. Teresa of Avila, better known as Mother Teresa. So this is Mother Teresa's prayer. So if you'll pray with me this morning. Lord, govern everything by your wisdom. O Lord, that my soul may always be serving you in the way that you will and not as I choose. Let me die to myself so that I may serve you. Let me live to you who you are and life itself. Amen. All right. Let me stop my share. Okay. I want to follow up on compass points from yesterday. Oh, yeah, the Finland phenomenon. I'm not going to make you watch that hour while we're together, but I do want you to watch that. I'll give us time today to watch. It's there in our menu, the Finland phenomenon, because I want to talk about it the next time we're together. So it's 1 hour long. I've got it queued up on YouTube. So if you'll watch that, we'll talk about it next time. But I'm not going to sit. Normally we sit and watch it together on Sundays, but we won't do that since we're online. So make sure you do that. And I'll talk about dissertations in a minute, but I want to follow up on compass points. So we talked yesterday about compass points and the different directions that people's personalities take in groups. And what I want to follow up briefly this morning is remembering that the best way to be a servant leader and be an instructional leader is to organize your schools into PLCs. Most schools do it already. If not, you need to. Elementary school, it's usually grade level. High school, it's usually content-based departments. But these groups, the first thing that I would say, if you got more than 4, break them into multiple groups. Don't have groups larger than 4. Have subgroups if you can. But please understand, those groups take on one of those 4 dynamics. And so let me pull that document up. I should have already had it queued up. Let me share my screen and get it up. And what I want us to think about and what I want you to talk about to me this morning is how you would go about dealing with groups as a school leader that take on these different personas. Let me close that as well. Okay. All right, so there they are. So you got groups north, west, south, or east. So let's take a minute to reread those. I'll stop my video a second so make sure the share is working. I'm still with you. So let's focus on, you've got a group, one of your PLCs that's a north group. We'll take that one. They're a north group. The Just Do It crowd. And we'll call the East group the Big Picture group. And then the South group, we're going to call them the Caring group. And then the West group, we're going to call them the Detail group. All right, I'm going to stop my share again. So those are our 4 groups. All right, let me turn my camera back on. All right, the North group. What are the each of you tell me what the benefits of the North group are for you as a leader working and leading that group, but also what might be potential issues or problems with working with a group like that. Beth, I'll start with you this morning. What are the advantages of having a North group?
The tasks will get done, and they're going to get done within a given period of time. The disadvantage of that is they may not think about all the details, and so something might be left out or not done quite to the level it needs to be done. I kind of think of this as with teachers that are teaching the surface level of the standard, they're not going down into the depth of the standard, so they think they're teaching the standard and they think they've completed the task, but there's little things that have been left out.
They're just covering the material.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the pacing guide. They're just getting it done. One of the things that, to your point, one of the things that when you have groups like that, they don't get down in the weeds. They don't get down in the details. They don't drill down. Exactly right, Beth. And they just do the rote and recall stuff. They don't do it at a higher level. They don't do synthesis or evaluation or any of that. They just, they just do rote and recall. Do you know this or don't know this? They don't drill down into the standards. Now, as long as the kids are asked the questions the same way on the test, they're okay. But what if they're asked, if the question itself doesn't look exactly what they covered, that they don't get a deeper understanding. And that's why I know I covered that. How come they're so bad when it comes test time? Another thing that those teachers don't tend to do is they don't let assessment drive instruction. I covered that yesterday. We're moving on to something else today. Do we know they got it or not? I just threw it out there. They are content driven. They're focused on the job only. They don't focus on the needs of the learner. That's when they're working with kids. Now, here's the other thing, the best point. They don't really care about feelings either, and they just run right over top of the other folks that they work with. And so everybody else in the building is always mad as fire at them all the time because they just run right over. So Beth, the follow-up question is what would you do? What would you do with a group like that to keep them from just overpowering everybody else, running over top of the adults in the building, and only covering just covering the material and not for comprehension, but just for coverage? What will you do with a group like that?
For me, I think that's when I would ask some pointed questions to get them to stop for a minute and say, I guess I'm thinking about like with my teachers that don't feel like they need to be coached in their content because they think they know it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we were looking at just recently is the end of year K2 math summative. And there was one teacher that was right across the board with every single one of our priority standards in our district. And the teachers were like, but she was a TA and she thinks she knows it. And I said, then you need to present her with her data and say, you have sent these students to the next grade level now. Tell me if you feel like they're fully prepared.
Right.
And we're going into, with kindergarten through second grade, they're going to be doing standards-based grading off of proficiency scales. And so that's where, I would have to sit with that teacher and say, let's look at your data from the end of last year. Let's look at the proficiency scales and let's talk about how well do you know your standard.
Exactly. You got to present them with the cold, hard facts.
Right.
That's exactly right. Now, everybody understands, to get us up to speed here in this conversation, everybody understands. First thing when I teach 736 or 738 is I explain to doctoral students, the least reliable form of data is self-report. And the problem with M-class, Dibble, whatever you want to call K2 data, is it's teacher opinion. It's, the kid doesn't actually take the test. And so these kind of folks, to Beth's point, that's a perfect example, Beth. Perfect example is they way overestimate what their kids can do based on what they covered. I know I covered that with them. Just because you're pitching doesn't mean they're catching. You got to review your data and look at the standards. Where are they? And you got to have some kind of independent assessment from the teacher, because the teacher will say, "Oh yeah, they know it all," because I know it all. They have to be confronted with the cold hard facts. That's how you have to deal with them. You have to go performance based with them. You can't go emotional. You can't go you can't go relationship. They only care about, those folks seemingly only care about the task. Now, as a leader, somewhere along the line in one of your leadership courses, you had hopefully they covered Hershey and Blanchard, which is, baseline stuff. But there's two types of behaviors that, task behavior and relationship behavior. These folks are only interested in task behaviors. They don't have any relationship behaviors. They don't care about that. And that's why everybody in the building's mad at them, the other adults. And that's why kids don't connect with them and learn anything. They don't drill down, and they only teach surface level, rote and recall kind of things. And if you know anything about K2 kids, they don't remember anything if you just tell them. But you got to drill down and go deeper with them. And so that is exactly right. That's the problem with you North people, is they're task oriented only, and that causes problems in terms of content. And it also causes relationship problems on your faculty. And so you have to confront them with the cold hard facts. So that's exactly how you deal with groups that take on that North personality, group personality. All right, Corey, big picture people, the East people. What's the good thing about them?
I think you want them as part of the planning process, because they're the ones that, when you're like talking about the master schedule, they're the ones that are going to be like, maybe we shouldn't have this class like right after this one, or, on different parts of the building. Like, they're the ones that kind of think about those kind of more abstract things. But then also sometimes, looking at the bad side of that, if you're only focused on the big picture, then you're not planning for the day to day. And so that can be kind of the give and take with that.
Well, you're exactly right. They're great if you're sitting and doing a master schedule. And I'm gonna use a high school example because Corey's in high school. Do you want to have a singleton course like calculus opposite band? Well, that's an extraneous example, and you just pull that one out of the air. But your East people would be the ones that would say, better not do that. Well, why not? Well, because all your band kids are usually your best math kids, and they'll all be taking calculus. And if you set band and calculus opposite one another, that either you got nobody in calculus or you got nobody in band. They'd be thinking about things like that, and that's exactly what you use them for. But now the execution piece, not so much. They tend to be thinkers and not doers. And that's the negative side of them, as Corey said, is that they'll think it to death. And so you use them in the planning phase, but you have to supervise them on the execution phase, because they're paralyzed by thought. Sometimes they're still thinking, well, maybe I should do this. But at some point, you still just got to go do it. But they're great in the planning phase, but the execution phase, many of them don't know all the steps to execution. And so sometimes you have to be much more directed with them in terms of, I need for you to do the task piece. I need for you to do this, and this in this way.
Yeah, they're the ones that will run the school talent show that's
Yeah.
like covered by the news and everything, but forget to take attendance like 3 of the 5 days during the week.
Exactly. That perfect example. They're not the people who do the grunt work every day. They're too high level. They don't think about that. And you say, well, taking attendance, how important is that? That's the most important. If you want to get your money, you got to take attendance every day. Now, I know that's just grunt work, but they don't think about stuff like that. That's a perfect example, because you got to take attendance to get your money. Now, we all know that schools are funded on ADA, average daily attendance. Doesn't matter how many is on the roll. When the state sends you your money, North or South Carolina, per pupil, again, flat grant funding, $8,000 a year, roughly. They divide it up into 10 monthly sections of $800 per kid, but they only pay for the kids who come. So they subtract absenteeism. So if your district absenteeism is 5%, they take 5% off every kid's money that month. You don't get that. So it's kind of important. Some of that grunt work, as we call it, is kind of important. They're the ones that forget to go and do their bus duty, and then some kid gets hurt at the bus lot. You got a lawsuit.
The first school I taught at was in Denmark, South Carolina.
Mhm.
And we only had 246 kids in the whole high school. So we knew where we had a person dedicated to attendance and truancy, and she knew where every single kid was every single day, knew when they had disappointments before they did, because it was that important to
Yes.
fund the school.
Yes. I mean, we don't remember that, organizationally. I mean, we again, there's two sides to schools. There's the academic side, but there's the organizational side. The East people are great on the academic side, not so much on the organizational side, and you have to minimize their impact. And sometimes you may have to have somebody else that does some of that stuff for them, because they'll forget to do their bus duty, or they'll forget to take their attendance. And those things are real important. They'll forget to be on supervision in cafeteria. Again, average daily attendance. If you don't take your attendance, don't get it right, you lose money. On supervision, the rule is 45-1. Well, what's that rule, Dale? Well, I can tell you from being in court, if you have a situation like, we'll use cafeteria supervision, you got to have one adult in there on supervision for every 45 kids. What happens if a fight breaks out, a kid or a faculty member gets hurt, and you don't have 45 in there because the person, one of those East people forgot to do their lunch duty that day? Not going to go well for you in court, folks. So the East people, you're worried on the operational side all the time. Do they need, and you might minimize in your schedule when you're making out schedules. I don't really need that person to be doing this because they'll forget. I can have them doing something else. But the critical things like taking attendance, you'll have to follow up with them on that, because only they can do that unless you've got somebody who does that. But you might want to think about it when you're putting together your supervision schedule and duty rosters. You might want to be thinking about these kinds of groups or people, and you might have them as a group working together. But you need to be real careful on the operational side of big picture people, because they don't follow through. And it's not that they're mean or hateful or lazy. It's just that they're big picture people. And you have to minimize the legal exposure that you have for them not following through on the things you need them to follow through. That's what's important about working with those groups. All right. Jessica, do the South caring people. What's the good thing about them?
So they're always going to be thinking about somebody else and what their feelings might be about a decision that's made, or making a decision, or moving forward. But at the same time, on the negative side of that, sometimes things just have to be done, whether you like the way you feel about it or you don't like the way you feel about it. It just has to happen. So they got to balance.
Yeah, if we're looking at task and relationship behaviors, they're only interested in relationship behaviors. They're not interested in task behaviors. Or if they think how they feel matters. Now, I hate to be ugly, but how you feel don't matter. Certain things have to get done, period. Now, if you've got clubs or organizations or things where you can plug in and they can connect the students, the student service oriented kind of things in schools, that's really good. But task things that are unpleasant, they're not really good at that. And so you have to work with them, A, and B, you have to, again, minimize their impact, that they're only interested about how others feel and about how they feel. So again, you have to, as a leader, you have to, you're organizing your school into PLCs to get your work done into smaller groups. You're breaking it down into, pairs and pods, teams. You're dividing and conquering. You got to be careful about teams that take on that they only care. You need to have them doing caring kind of things. But sometimes they have to do task things, and you have to have those critical conversations with them. I appreciate your hesitance about this, but we got to get this done, and that's
Those
that
people are really
conversation.
great on hospitality committees.
Yes, absolutely. Doing parent nights and hospitality and working with student clubs, that kind of thing. But the unpleasant stuff, not so much. All right, Siobhan, tell us about the detail people, the West people. What's the good thing about them?
And they're going to be very organized. They are going to plan the tasks out that need to be done. They may have a little trouble getting started, but they are going to have a plan for everything that needs to be done and for everybody.
Absolutely. Those are the people you need on the operational side. Now, what's the downside of them?
They may not get started in a timely manner.
That is exactly right. Sometimes you have to prompt them a little bit. It's good enough. Let's go. It's good enough. Let's go. Now, that's one of the conversations that I have to have in 603 with students every week that I'm with them is folks, we could all do better if we had more time. Because I tend to, when we get people with a lot less experience than y'all that are moving, that are still in the class. This is my 603s, my regulars, the people who are still classroom based, and that's the only experience they've ever had. They think it's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be perfect. And that they get their score back from task stream and they made a 3.5. What can I do? Why didn't you work with me more to get a 4? Well, it took 2 weeks on that to get a 3.5. Don't think that we could have worked another day or two and gotten a 4. It might have taken 4 more weeks to get you from a 3.5 to a 4. We didn't have 4 more weeks. We could all do better if we had more time. As Siobhan, a perfect example that they're so busy planning and trying for it to be perfect, getting them to launch is the problem with them. And so what you have to do with those groups is tell them is it's good enough. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. Those people tend to be perfectionists in their personal life. They want everything to be exactly right. And if they think they plan long and hard enough, there will never be a time in school administration that plan A works perfectly every time. You just got to plan the best you can and go in the time allotted that you have. And so there again, Siobhan's exactly right. The timeliness with that group, they do great work. Their plan, their detail, but time. Now in the classroom, those people tend to get way behind on the pacing guide. That's their problem. They you're 6 weeks in and they've covered 3 weeks worth of material. That's the problem with them. And so to wrap this segment up, you should organize your school as a school leader into pairs and pods. PLCs is what we refer to them. I call them pairs and pods, but PLCs. But know that each of those PLCs will take on one of these group dynamics. And you've got to understand that they won't all be the same. They will take on a different group dynamic. And you've got to know how best to utilize them for the strengths of that type of group, whether it's northeast, south, or west, but also know what the pitfalls are going to be so that when you're deciding what those groups are doing, that you put them in an area that capitalizes on their strengths and tries to negate some of their weaknesses. That's the higher level of PLCs. That's the doctoral level of PLCs. You know how to form them, you know how to run them, you know their norms and values. The doctoral level is how do you now manage them for optimum performance in your school? That's the doctoral level. That's the advanced level of PLCs, and that's why we do compass points as we start our PLC work. That's why we do compass points. I don't want you just to think about how to do a PLC. You know that. I want you to think about how do I lead and manage PLCs. And you have to understand, again, they fall into 4 distinct categories: Northeast, South, and West. They take on that group persona. And if you don't understand that, they won't work for you. They'll work against you. They'll be, instead of being, a bonus, being a positive, they can become a negative. Folks think, well, we'll just organize and we'll put people in pairs and pods and teams and PLCs. And no, that's just the first part. The more important piece is now, how do you manage them? So that's your overarching. This kind of wraps up, and I always like to come back and revisit after people have had time to think about these, like this morning. This is the overarching theory of leadership for PLCs. Is I've now got to manage these teams. I've got to lead these teams, and you have to do both. You have to lead and inspire them, but you also have to manage them by making sure that you put them in the areas where they're the strongest and not the areas where they're going to be a problem all the time. Now, to wrap up this segment, what if they're just not working? Is it wrong to reform PLCs? Now, if you read the literature, they think it's wrong to do that you're just supposed to work with them and just keep on working with them and more and more till you get them where you need them to be. What do you think about that notion? And we're going to go around the room, and then this will wrap up this segment. What do you think about if PLCs aren't working, or you're spending way too much time having to be engaged with them all the time? They're working you rather you working them as the leader. See, they're there. They're there to work to get the goals of the organization done, and not take all your time, so that you don't have to put your finger on everything. Again, EDCI leadership is different than EDLS leadership in that you can't be in every room every day like EDCI people. You've got to divide and conquer. You've got these people where you're going out to do the work. But if they're working you, is it wrong to reform PLCs is the question. Jessica, yes or no? Is it wrong to reform PLCs?
I don't think so. I think that's the whole reason why in the elementary setting, I think that's the whole reason why we choose sometimes to move one teacher from one grade to another, because I think there's a fine line between coaching and then just, I've coached you this much and it's not working, so now it's time to do some action behind it because the other's not working. And we just have to know that balance.
Perfect example. That at some point you can't just spend all your time trying to fix a problem. You've got, and that's the leadership piece. Now that's something that we don't do in EDCI. In EDCI, we just keep on working. But in leadership, we have a certain amount of time, we have to move on. And so again, we got to shift our mindset from being a teacher to a leader, but we've got to shift now from being an EDCI leader where we would coach and work with that teacher ad infinitum to the point where the goal in EDCI is to improve that teacher. The goal in EDLS is to get it done. We have a different perspective of leadership in LS. We can't just be focused on developing that teacher. If it's not working, we've got to move on from it. That's exactly right. Siobhan, your thoughts on that?
I agree, but I guess I have a question to follow up with that. I see how that works because all of my experience has been in elementary school, and the past 4 years is with coaching. So I can see how, that works in elementary school. But now that I'm in high school, and so our PLC is all English teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just move an English teacher
right
to math.
Right.
So how does that work?
Sometimes you have to move them out.
Okay.
And see, you were supposed to go last on that one. Um, but we'll tackle that one now.
Or you can move what grade level they do, because that's a thing we've done in our school, because
Yeah.
PLCs were useless for a while. I was going to talk about the accountability aspect. That's
Yeah.
going to have an
Go
accountability
right
part.
ahead.
Just that you were talking about, like, coaching people versus, kind of that. And there's got to be an accountability. Like, if you're going to kind of move PLCs, or if you're going to kind of move people around, you have to have a reason why. And so having something simple as, our school instituted a Google form that we have to fill out during our PLCs, which seems kind of simple, but there's an accountability aspect to it. So it's like, if they do make changes, if they do move someone from English 4 that's been teaching seniors and relatively having it easy for a while to now teaching English 1 or English 2, there's like reasons for that. And it's like, well, obviously in the PLC, our graduation rate isn't going up the way we wish it would, and in your PLCs you don't seem to be doing very much according to the form you turn in. So here's why we're making these changes.
Mhm.
Okay.
It goes back to the pairs and pods notion, Siobhan. Your pod is English. Your pair is whatever your grade level is. Pairs and pods, according to the size that you have. If you know, catching on to the pairs and pods notion is, if your pairs aren't working like Corey's talking about, then you might move them from English 10 to English 12, or vice versa. And now, looking at the pod, which is English, if they're not working in English, we can't move them to math, and that's when we have to get to the point: would we be better off with somebody else? That's a hard that's a hard thing to think about, but that's what we have to think about on the LS side. All right, we had you in a pair. You didn't work in that pair. We moved you to another pair within the pod, because we can't get outside of our pod because of certification. Talked about that yesterday. The state says that you got to be certified. We can't move a math teacher over to PE or English. Again, that's one of the reasons I don't like Collins is get them in the bus and then move seats. Well, you can't always move seats because of certification. So I said Collins is very limited. But under the pairs and pods notion is, we got them in a pair. They're not working in that pair, which is 2 to 4. They're not working inside that, so we move them somewhere else, another grade level within the same pod. If they don't work out there, it's Sunday, so I'll go biblical on you. It may be time for a new ox.
Okay.
What did the Lord say? It's okay to miss church on Sunday if your ox is in the ditch and it's an emergency. But if it's not an emergency, the corollary to that, if it's not an emergency, we may need a new ox if your ox is in the ditch every Sunday. That's the difference in EDCI and EDLS in a nutshell. We have to make those kinds of decisions. In our structure of pods and pairs, PLCs, which are pods and pairs, if you can't fit in a pair, no matter what pair that I have you in that pod, you're just not right for that pod. It's not like I can just move you over to the math department. That's exactly right. That's when I have to make a decision: can I keep dealing with the 4-alarm fire that you're causing every day, or do I need to move on? Is it time for a new ox? That's also, that's the delineator between EDCI and EDLS right there. EDCI never gives up on people, and you keep working and coaching, but again, EDLS, we can't do that. We can't do that in LS. We have to eventually, call in the dogs and put the fire out. It's over. It's hard. But here's the thing. You can't lead a school until you can let a good person go, but they can't teach and can't get along. They show up every day. They're on the job, but they can't teach. Kids don't learn with them. We have to be able to separate from those people. We do everything we can to get them where they need to be, but at some point we have to draw the line. And again, the hardest part is this is a good person. This is their livelihood. But if they can't or won't, it doesn't matter if they can't or they won't. They don't do what we need them to do every day, which is teach kids so that they learn and perform and get along with the other adults in the building so that we can, as a group, divide and conquer. We can't use them anymore. We have to come to that decision. Beth?
So kind of adding on to what Jessica was talking about, you know, my world has been in the elementary. And I've done more in getting into more coaching now, but I feel like we can, but it's not necessarily the best idea to shift teachers from a grade level to another grade level within the school year. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where we have to deal with it at least for that school year before we can make those shifts. So if the group is not working, then some options could be that you assign certain tasks based on each person in the PLC's strengths, you know, such as, okay, you're going to be the note taker, you're going to be the facilitator of the meeting. And, you know, I need to see the agenda that you're going to do for the meeting. So I make sure that you all are covering the critical things, but, you know, you have like certain, you know, you can, a timekeeper, a recapper, there's like different roles within the team that they could have, and you could try to assign those roles to the team based on their strengths within that compass activity of knowing your teachers and stuff, so that at least their meetings can be productive, because you'll see notes on the agenda of what discussions and decisions were made, but at least then they're going to function for the year at least.
Excellent. When I was senior high chair in Charlotte Mecklenburg, well, that was a day or two ago. One of the things that I got a seat on the calendar committee. This was in the 90s. And I twisted every arm that I could twist, and every bit of power and influence that I had, personal and otherwise, positional, and got the calendar changed so that we could start school the first week in August and get done by Christmas, the first semester over. Now, a lot of, you know, we did it 1 year, and of course, then General Assembly said you couldn't start before the 25th. Now some people are breaking away from that in North Carolina. South Carolina's been smart enough to break away for that for years. What's that got to do with the conversation that Beth just had? Well, this is the deal. And this was one of the reasons why I liked it. I like doing semesters so that we can get through before Christmas, number one, because of exams, but number two, we can reorganize for the second semester. If we got something that's not working, we don't have to limp through the whole year. That was my perspective as a high school principal. But we could do the same thing in elementary and middle and junior high, according to what you got. We could reorganize for the next semester. We don't have to live with a non-performing teacher or teams. We can try to figure out something to do. We don't have to wait till the end of the year, because generally by October, before cold weather comes, but then you got to live with it the rest of the year, and you're band-aiding it, as Beth was just talking about. You're band-aiding it all year. I don't mind band-aiding it till December. I don't like having to band-aid it the rest of because I'm going to tell you a little secret about the school leadership business. It's called the doldrums of winter. When it gets to be February and it's dark when you leave home every day and it's dark when you get home every day, depression sets into people. All those problems that you had Band-Aids on in the fall, boy, when it gets to the doldrums of winter, them Band-Aids don't work anymore. Boy, I'm telling you, it gets really ugly. In that period from the middle of February to the beginning or the middle of April, when finally the sun comes back out and things start moving again, that 6 weeks in the middle is hell in the school business. It's just hell. I'm just going to tell you right now, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Everything that you just had a fix or a Band-Aid on gets ripped off during that 6 weeks. It's absolutely awful. The first time that you go through it, as a leader, you'll be like, why did nobody ever tell me about the doldrums of winter? Why did nobody ever tell me about this? This is just like a gulag. It's like we're reporting to a prison every day. That's what it's like, folks. During that period of time, you're just trying to get through that time because people's tempers are short, their emotions, there's depression that sets in. That's a really tough time, that 6 weeks in the school business. It's cold, it's cloudy, it's dark, and organizations take on those same characteristics during that 6 weeks. And everything that you did just as a Band-Aid back in the fall just goes all to hell during that period of time. And that's why I love semesters. I love semesters. I'm even in elementary school. I love semesters. It gives us an opportunity to regroup mid-year. And sometimes we really need that. We really need it. Especially when we're bringing in so many new people now. Especially now as we bring in new people. Again, I didn't read something to figure this out. I live this. I told you I had 37 vacancies at the junior high that I took over when I got there. So I had half the faculty was new people. We had 1,200 students, and half the faculty nearly was new. And you learn, now once you get to a faculty that's more settled and been more permanent, it's not as bad. But when you're bringing in new people every year, like we are now in schools, and they're not always the best people, you need a chance to reorganize midway to make these pairs and pods work for you. So that's the notion. You don't have to live with it. I don't see a thing nor wrong with changing in the middle of the year if you're changing. But now semesters and you don't have a break, I don't recommend that. That's not a good thing. But if you can finish the semester and make a change, and you've got a break like the Christmas break to get all that organized and planned out, yeah, you're going to have to work during the holidays. But you're going to have a chance to get through the doldrums of winter that way, because teacher absenteeism is just through the roof during that period of time, and their effectiveness is lower during that period of time as well. Even if they show up, they're not as good as other times. That's just the truth of the situation, folks. This is real talk about the business. That 6 weeks will either make you or break you as a school principal. That 6 weeks is the most important 6 weeks. People think the beginning of the school is the most important. It's not. It's that 6 weeks from the middle of February to the 1st of April. That's the most important time. You either make it through and you finish strong and your test scores are good, or you don't. You got to know that. You need to know that up front. That you got to gird your loins and be ready for that time. You got to do the best you can do to get your school in the best shape that you can have it in when that time hits. Otherwise, you will lose your way. You'll lose your focus as a school, as an organization, and you'll just be putting in time every day, just trying to get through the time. Teacher absenteeism will spike, and it won't go well for you. It will not go well for you. And so, just some thoughts. That wraps up our compass activities. I want to show you my plan. It's part of a bigger lesson, and we'll talk more about the lesson. But to conclude this session, I want to show you this. I call it MTSS for teachers. Let me pull it up. And here it is. And this is kind of where we've headed. And this speaks to compass points, and it speaks to the bigger picture of managing your PLCs and managing your groups and managing personnel and leading, and leading personnel. So this is legal. All right. On MTSS for teachers, the first work day, and I've just got estimated times over here on the left. First work day, we do Marzano, high yield strategies. Now, we explore those in PLCs. So this is PLC work. And so we have 3 types of professional development. We have whole group, we have PLC work, and we have one-on-one. But kind of the heart of what we need to do for teachers is in that PLC work. That's what we're talking about, managing these teams. And so I've got this, and it's under the Mels 602 EBOS lesson plan. But basically, we explore those high yield strategies. We work those PLCs. We work our one-on-one coaching out of that PLC format. We try to limit the whole group stuff. Again, we want to be in pairs and pods. You know, if they're, you know, our goal is that we only do like 30 minutes of whole group stuff in terms of for the entire faculty. We want to move it down to the PLCs, you know, the small group, as you know, Linda Darling Hammond would say. We want to limit whole group. We want to work in small group PLCs as much as possible. Now we do the one-on-one coaching and working out of the PLC format. And so as you can see here, I've got it. What we would do, you know, working with our lower performing teachers, the PLCs, we'd be working with them. We would have somebody in the PLC coaching somebody, working with somebody one-on-one. But it eventually moves to an action plan second semester and a notice of non-renewal in the end if we can't get, if it's not working. And I'll stop my share. You can see the specifics of this. But the notion here is within our PLCs, we address our teaching and learning within our PLCs. We try to break our professional development down to those PLCs and make sure that they're meeting and that they're doing best practices and that we're exploring, you know, Jessica's a better teacher than me. She brings in, here's what I'm doing for similarities and differences, one of the 9 high yield strategies, but we're focusing on our data dives. We're focusing on best teaching practices. There's a reason why we call Marzano's 9 high yield strategies. They yield better data. Again, it's all data focused. Marzano is data focused. Each one of those 9 high yield strategies has a percentage or a variance score and how much it can improve scores. It's all about data. And we focus our entire school and our professional development and, you know, working on the adults. We focus it through our PLCs. That's where we do our one-on-one out of that. That's where we do individual, where the better ones help the not better ones, that empowerment piece. It's all through that. But at the end, there has to be a decision made, folks. We teach kids. Remember, we teach kids. If you've got but right now we're in the notion of we'll just get anybody, but we can't survive. No, the playing field is not level. I agree, it's not level, but we can't survive if all we're doing is just looking for bodies. We still have to maintain an instructional focus, and some good people just can't teach. But we give them the PLC format, pods and pairs, gives us every opportunity to be successful, to find different ways to back up and try something different and something new within that structure. That's how we instructionally lead a school from the LS side, is through our pods and pairs, our professional development through that. You can't be in every room every day. You can't be coaching every teacher every day as the leader. You have to break it into an organizational structure that feeds that growth and development of those teachers. And that is the PLC, pods and pairs system. And your overarching guide on those is understanding those compass points. That's the advanced level of PLCs, is understanding the compass points. And that's how it is the overlaying leadership piece to PLCs is compass points. I hope that makes sense to you. It's a different vision of how to lead schools than EDCI. It really is. But it is a practical vision of how EDLS folks have to run things as opposed to EDC. Nothing wrong with EDCI. I'm married to one. She's right in there. Love EDCI people. But it's a different vision of how to lead school from EDCI to EDLS. All right, so that's this morning's session. We'll take a few minutes here, so we'll be back. I'm going to try to get you out a little early today, so we're going to take a 12-minute break and we'll be back at 10:15. And we're back. All right, one of the mistakes that I make from time to time, not so much, I suspect, with you folks, but with the beginners in the MSA program is when I say, all right, here are the things you're going to need to do your AppSell, and the things you're going to need to do your OMA, is I assume that they know what I'm talking about. sometimes that's a bridge too far. So I'm going to review it with you. Not that I don't think that you know this stuff, but so that I make sure that we're all on the same page. So let me share my screen and go through them, and I'll try to be not bore you. All right. So when we talk about North Carolina report cards, I've got a link right here. So here are the things that I have pulled up. I pulled up Jessica's report card. You're at St. Paul's Elementary. Now, some of this might be hard to see, but now understand everybody can see this. This is public information. Again, if it didn't matter, if scores didn't matter, we wouldn't keep them and we wouldn't report them out to the public. So sometimes this gets a little bit, gets inside your clothes with you, but you got to wear it. You own it. That's why it matters. That's why that's our perspective is that we make a good number go up or a bad number go down. That's why they hire us as school administrators. What do? We teach kids. So when we go in, we get this, but here's what we're looking at. Again, this is your comparative accountability, how you perform against everybody else. You're at 45, grade of D, but this is what's really important. Are you growing kids? And their growth history is really good. They only have one bad year, but their growth history has been really good at St. Paul's. And so they don't get the best kids, as you can see over here, but they do a lot with them. And see that means that's what we're talking about. We don't have anything to do with who we get. What we can do is look at what we do with them. And so our growth score is based off of EBOS, and we're going to dive into EBOS in a few minutes. We're going to dive deep into that because you're going to get 1,000 questions. You really need to understand that. Not so much how the calculations are, but how the expected score is derived, and I'll go through that with you. We want to look at those things, but we want to drill down. We want to look at things like economically disadvantaged. As you can see, the state of North Carolina, St. Paul's is 15% higher than the state of North Carolina on average on economically disadvantaged kids. Does that matter? Yes. Does it factor in? Yes. Do you have to make plans and accommodations because of that? Yes, you do. You need to know things like that. I'm going to step out on a limb here and say not everybody agrees with me on homework. But when you're at Title I schools, I think homework's actually bad. If they can do it, they didn't need to do it anyway. If they can't do it, you only reinforce bad habits. And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about that you have to make decisions on. So when I became principal of a Title I school, a Title I elementary school, first thing I did across the board, no homework. Don't be sending worksheets home. Don't be sending stuff home. It won't go well. They don't have a quiet place to study and work at home, and more than likely, they don't have anybody that can help them. And if they do help them, they teach them wrong, then you'll never train them the right way. That's what we're talking about. These kinds of things matter. These kinds of things matter. And we look at their math performance, and we look at their reading performance. You can see that grade level proficiency in math is about 50% for the state of North Carolina, and you can see where St. Paul's is at 39.7. Again, this is about who you got, not what you're doing with. But you can see they're working with them; they're doing better. Kids are growing. You can look at your teacher effectiveness over here. Unfortunately for St. Paul's, only 17.6% of their teachers are highly effective. Does that matter? Of course it does. We're going to have to be doing a lot of professional development through our PLC system with these folks because, 82% of them are only effective. Only 17% are highly effective. We need to get all of them over to the highly effective. Now we look over here on the other side. How many national board certified teachers do they have? They only have 2. So we got a lot of improvement to do on our teachers if we want. That's clear to see here. That's got to be a focus. That would be something that you would recognize. Not an overabundance of beginners either. See, these two things right here are kind of contradictory. Let's look at these two things again. You've only got 17.6 highly effective teachers and 82% that are just effective. You'd think, well, in that case, you probably got a lot of beginners, but when you look at this, you've only got 16% beginning teachers. Why you say, well, that's a lot, Dale? No, not in today's world. That's not a lot. Schools are averaging about 30% new teachers every year. Beth, what's the, you know, the rate in Gaston? I know Gaston's about that.
I don't know the rate, but I know we've had a ton of vacancies and trying to find teachers to fill them. We've got a lot of EPI teachers coming in that aren't necessarily brand new, but they're brand new to the country and to the content that they're going to be teaching. So, you know, it's a high number, I would say, if I were to hazard a guess.
Yeah, and we're doing this residency teacher deal. We're doing a lot of, TAs to teachers, that kind of thing. So, like you say, they may not exactly be beginning, but they're not. This is to my point. What Beth just said. This is and Jessica nodded her head. This is misleading. While you've only got 16.4% beginners, you got a lot that it is their first time or they're not experienced, and that's what's shown up here. See, this is telling you that you say, well, how in the world could you only have this many beginners if you've got, you know, only this many highly effective? Because we're taking TAs, because we're taking residency teachers, because we're taking EPI. So that again feeds back to that notion. We really got to work hard in our PLCs to get these people up to speed. We're not getting, you know, to Beth's point, we're not getting any some places, but we're not getting the best ones. Again, that's when there's where the Collins model breaks down. Get the best ones and get them on the bus. What if there ain't any best ones, or what if there ain't any? That speaks to that PLC notion of you really got to work for improvement inside your best ones helping you not best ones. That teacher empowerment model where we have our best ones working with our not best ones, where we empower them outside, to be better in the classroom. Teacher qualifications.
And to add to that, in some schools, there's such a huge turnover that that data is not even reflective of the people that are in the building today.
Exactly. That was last year.
Right.
Maybe worse this year. And more than that, because of the turnover, you've got to have a system in place that accommodates that turnover. That is the PLC system. It accommodates that turnover. Where we bring the new ones inside, we divide them up, and we have the more experienced ones working through the PLC, either in small group or one-on-one, to get those people up to speed. You can't go out and do everybody like you can as a coach. Just like when Siobhan was a coach, she could go out and work with somebody. You can't do that as a principal or an AP. You got to have a system that does that. Again, this is the next level stuff. And then you got to know how to organize those PLCs and get them, because of the group dynamic that they take on. You have to be in tune to that. But you're exactly right. This tells us that we really got to work our PLCs when we look at this kind of data. Now, as we continue to dive on down, this one is Robeson County was one of the original, I believe, Leandro plaintiffs. And one of the things that we see here is because of the inequity in funding. So when we look at average class size, we see that St. Paul's is above the state average in every grade level, because Robeson is a low wealth county. They can't afford any local teachers, locally paid, in order to help with reduced class size. Again, the Leandro case was Hoke and Robinson and some of the lower wealth states sued the state and said, what you should do, and I'm going to stop my share. I've got a little slide with this on it, but y'all will figure this out. So back in when this happened in the early 90s, in 93, this case came up 30 years ago. Now, full disclosure, I was on the legal team that was with the plaintiffs, and we lost. So I'm not, it's not like I'm still bitter 30 years later, but anyway, state funds you at $7,000, everybody at $7,000. Now, what happened in 1966? The state got out of capital funding. They said, school districts, you have to pay for your own facilities. Well, it caused a lot of consolidation around the state. Charlotte and Mecklenburg became Charlotte Mecklenburg. High Point City, Greensboro City, and Guilford County became Guilford County. Cleveland County, where Gardner Webb's located, became, instead of being Kings Mountain City, Shelby City, and Cleveland County, it became Cleveland County because they couldn't afford to fund three the facilities for 3 districts. So the consolidation started. Now, in the lower wealth counties, most of all, remember, school boards are unempowered in North and South Carolina. We're getting into next semester stuff, but it's relevant this semester. That means your school board cannot levy taxes. When the school board develops the budget every year, who do they have to go to with hat in hand and beg them to fund it? Anybody know? Who funds schools? Not the school board. The county commissioners in your county funds your schools. Who else do they have to fund? Well, they have to police and fire and public services. What about community colleges? You got a community college in your county? Of course you do in North Carolina. There's 57 community and technical colleges, and they have they have satellite campuses. I'm here in Mecklenburg today at my primary home. We have 5 CPCC campuses in this county alone, and then they always have one in the county next door. So they have multiple campuses and there's 58 of them, and they have multiple campuses. Well, their capital needs have to be funded by the county commissioners too. And so what happens is, folks, the money runs out in the low wealth counties. And so what the Leandro case is, all right, we start with 7. Charlotte Mecklenburg at the time was able not only to fund their facilities because they had consolidated, they added another $4,000 every year to that 7. So the per pupil spending in Charlotte Mecklenburg in 93 was $11,000 per pupil, and it was $7,000 in Robinson. Now, that extra $4,000 goes to buying teachers generally per pupil, and so you can reduce class size. So what Leandro is, all right, here's what we want. We want the state to fund us at 9 and fund Charlotte Mecklenburg at 7. So, or at 5, excuse me. So when they add their 4,000, they're now at 9. You funded us at 9. So in the end, we both end up at 9, rather us at 7 and them at 11. But the case was lost. And they said that we will not do that, and you will not take local money and do that either. And so today it's a wider discrepancy. Charlotte Mecklenburg spends about $6,000 more per pupil than Robinson County does. And where they spend that money is on teachers. And so when you see a state report card, this is a very telling fact. When you see a state report card, one of the things that you should look at is this one right here. And that tells you that, as you can see, St. Paul's has higher than the state average on all class sizes, which means the district is not able to fund and get that class size down. Now, there is an alternative to that, but it's such a political nightmare to do. As a person who, by the way, has done it, I would not recommend it. What you can do is run a replication of the STAR project. I did. Where you let all of your TAs go except in kindergarten and reduce class size that way. And we could talk about that study and what I did for years to come, but just suffice it to say, if you're looking for test scores, it's the thing to do. Politically, no, because TAs many times are more politically connected than teachers because that's straight patronage job. You just hire them based on their husband moved into the county and had this job and his wife needed the job or they've been there forever. TAs have a lot of political clout, but if you want to improve your scores in the school, especially if you're in a low wealth school in a low wealth district or Title I school, the way to do that is get rid of your teacher assistants, except in kindergarten, and reduce your class sizes. That helps more than anything else. And so here's the pop quiz for the morning. And here are your choices. Looking simply at performance, test scores. Here are your choices. All right, there are your choices. Here's your pop quiz. Which of these configurations gets the best performance test score wise and which gets the worst? So let's look at them. Teacher and teacher assistant with 28 students in the room. Teacher and teacher assistant with 15 students in the room. Teacher with 28 students and teacher with 15 students. So everybody set your alignment in terms of best to worst. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And tell me when you're done. All right. Beth, what's your lineup here?
I said 2, 4, 1, 3 from best to worst.
All right. Jessica?
I said the same, 2, 4, 1, 3.
Yvonne?
I said 4, 2, 1, 3.
And Corey?
I said 2, 4, 1, 3.
And here's the answer. I love EDCI people. Y'all are so kind. Y'all are just so kind. I love you. Oh, I do. You're just so kind. That's the real answer. That's not debatable. Star project for the entire state of Tennessee. I replicated it, called the Oak Hill Project. Did it. It's just the truth, folks. This is the performance truth. What you all have talked about is unfortunately there's a lot of political truth in it, not objective truth. The objective truth is 4, 3, 2, 1. Teachers along with students are better than teacher and teacher assistants. They just are. Teacher assistants are a political hire. They're not good. They don't help you academically. They just don't, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And then, of course, after that, the fewer you got, the better you are. The notion here is we don't go out and talk about this in public, but teacher assistants do not help you academically. They many times hurt you because we have them leading and instructing and working with kids. That's just the truth. So higher class sizes hurt you, and the more teacher assistants you've got hurt you. You can see those things in your report card. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. But if you want to change the trajectory of a school, get out of the teacher assistant business, get into the teacher business, and work with them. Because when you're working those PLCs, folks, when you're working those PLCs and you're doing all that improvement for teachers, what are the teacher assistants doing? They're keeping the kids while you're in training and PLCs and planning. They're the one working with them. Do they ever come to professional development? No. No. That's the truth right there, folks. I just told you the truth. It hurts, doesn't it? Told you, the LS side, we're not near as nice as y'all on the other side. We just aren't. I told you I'd hurt your feelings when we started. That was full disclosure first night. I'm not trying to. We're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to hurt your feelings. This is grown people stuff. It's the way it goes. You got to understand that. But those are the way, that's the way, and there's some other things. That's the way you read a report card. And that's when we say, pull your report card data, and we just assume you got to be able to interpret those report cards. So that will help you on with your OMA and your AppSell if you can read a report card. And know what it means. All right, so there's the answer: 4, 3, 2, 1. And so there's some other things, especially for secondary schools, your suspensions in school and out of school, your acts of criminality, devices per student, again, less than state average, wireless access, about the same as the state. These things all matter. You can, you can see that the local puts very little money per pupil. The state's up to 88.67. I just round it down to 8,000 because, again, attendance knocks off. That's where we start. But statewide, the average that they actually send once they subtract attendance is about $8,000. And the local, as you can see in Robinson County, can only contribute $949. Not enough to significantly hire teachers. You need to be, again, Charlotte-Mecklenburg spends 6. And then, so that's how you look at a report card in North Carolina. Any questions on looking at a report card? All right, I can close that one. South Carolina report card. This is Corey School, Irmo, and 5 in Lexington and Richland. Lexington 5, they have academic achievement. They have theirs a little bit career and college readiness, but this is how you look at a report card in South Carolina. It talks about their academic performance. Again, they compare the school to the district and to the district to the state. They do the same kinds of things, but you look for the same kind of stuff. They just do theirs again a little differently. They don't have it all on one screen like North Carolina does. You have to go to the individual ones. But so Corey, this is yours. And again, average, here are the things in high school that matter. Here's your academic achievement, career and college readiness, all these things. This is what you look for that tells you what your school looks like. All right. I won't belabor the point on that one. All right. In North Carolina, we have the Teacher Working Conditions Survey. There are 12 areas. And one of the things you can drill down in this is Bessemer City Elementary in Gaston County. And we can look at, and the beauty of it is it gives us color coding over here. The things that are kind of average are in the blue. And the things that are good are in green, and the things that need some attention are in yellow, and the bad things that will get you fired are in the red. I love the color coding, and you can look at your school. So we divide up into time, facilities, resources, community support and involvement, managing student conduct, teacher leadership, that's empowerment, school leadership, professional learning opportunities, instructional practices and supports, retention, equity, safety. They've got a new cyberbullying question. That's concerning that it's blue and not green. New teacher supports. These are all the areas of teacher working conditions survey. And I'll speak to that in just 1 second. Now, Corey, here's the problem in South Carolina. They don't post the survey data. Your principal you have to get it from your principal. All they do on their surveys is when you click it, you take it. They don't report the outcomes, but they are public information, but you have to ask your principal for your survey data. And you want the teacher survey data right here. This is the one we want. But as you see, when you click it, South Carolina, if it works, it's spinning this morning, all it will do is give you the survey. It won't tell you the results. The principal has it.
They have some of them under, I can't remember what part it is. They have like some of the questions, but it's not all of them.
Yeah, exactly. They've got them scattered out where you have to hunt them. Your principal has the composite. So that's just, rather than spending all your time and just ask him or her for it. I think you have a her. So that's it for South Carolina. So when we're looking at all the things right here, I have these NC report cards. I have the links. Again, Corey, you'd probably be better ask your principal. Here's the link to the teacher working conditions survey. We've already covered this. For you two that are still writing dissertation, Corey and Siobhan, I have a link to my Qualtrics drive. I'm the one that teaches Qualtrics. If you need help with Qualtrics, I'm your person. I have a drive where you can go. You should be able to get in, and I have Qualtrics notes right here on how, if you want to build a survey or want me to help you or whatever, I've got that in here as well. I know that's kind of off topic, but I have that down for today as well. But I have that link. If you need help with APA writing, it's here. And so those are the things. Now, our last segment this morning that I want to dive into is EVOS. One of the questions that you're going to get, and this is, again, some of us have been trying, with limited success for 30 years to get folks to understand accountability shouldn't be about who you get. It should be about what you do with it. Comparative accountability that we were in for the first 20 years from 1992 to about 2012 was only about who you got, really. If you had enough high ones, they'd cover up the low ones. Or if you were in a certain school, like I was talking about my wife, the scores walked in the front door, you didn't even have to show up, much less sober and clean clothes. The scores came every day because you had all these kids. But what if you didn't have all those great kids? And so it's always should have been about growth. But we finally got to the point where we understand that. Now, the problem you get into, and we showed yesterday, we talked about, did you meet growth, expected growth, and we could get into that side of it. The problem you get into with teachers is convincing them that you have the same opportunity with every kid to get growth out of it. That's the hardest part. They believe certain kids it's easier to get growth out of it. They don't understand that we control for all those variables in kids so that we have the same exact opportunity to get growth out of every kid that comes in our building. Now, that's not to say teachers work the same with different levels of kids, but we have the same opportunity to get growth because we control for all their variables. Now, y'all are doctoral, you know, two of you are doctors already, Dr. Jessica and Dr. Beth. Hold 1 second, I have to take this call from the dean. Pardon me for that. He emailed. I was expecting to call. We got one of my doctoral students through on Thursday, so I've got a new doctor today. Thank goodness. But convincing teachers that score, that kid's growth score, is legitimate, and that every kid's we can get this. We have the same opportunity as teachers to get growth out of every kid. That's a monumental task. And part of it is that the people who do EVOS, SAS out of the Research Triangle, they're a private company. They don't tell you anything other than we use previous test score data is all they'll tell you. And that makes teachers even more suspicious, but they don't give away their proprietary information. That's the problem that we get into, convincing teachers, you know, showing them you don't work very good with this kid or that kid, and we need to have you doing this until we can grow you, or that every group of kids has the same potential to grow. Every individual kid has the same potential to grow. They don't believe that, to their own detriment, unfortunately. So it's your job to explain EVOS to them in a way that you get them all on board. And I'm talking about the kid's individual growth score. That score is valid. It's legitimate. So here's the model. Now, again, SAS is a private company. So let me lead you through the process. Now, don't ask me how I know, but I know. All right. This is an introduction to the value-added model, where you're trying to get 85% of your teachers to get 85% of their kids making growth every year. So after 20 years of collecting data, test score data on kids, it was all dumped into a big ANOVA, analysis of variance. Y'all had 736, so you know what that is. They dumped that 20 years in and determine how much of the variance in standardized test scores, which is the independent variable, or Y, can be attributed to particular dependent variable, or X. So they threw everything but the kitchen sink in there, every variable that you could measure, that they could think of. How much variance does this variable have on test scores? I mean, they use the swag method, as we do. And you know what swag is in statistics, right? They used the swag method to come up with, they actually started with about 50 different dependent variables that they thought up. They used the swag method, which of course is just a stupid wild ass guess. That's swag. That's how you start in a note. Anything you can think of that might have some variance, you pull, you know, we test it. And they did. And they came up with 10 things, 10 dependent variables that determine the outcome or a kid's test score. The independent variable came up with 10. They started with 50. different things that they just, anything you could dream up. Is he left-handed? Is he right-handed? Does he have black? I mean, anything, any demographic that they could think of, that they put it in to the analysis of variance model. And they run it every year. They add last year's test scores. They keep running it. And so it fine tunes, and it's this. So what you do is we know that you add those 10 variables that they identified together, and that comes up with your independent or your test score. And so here are those 10 variables and how much variance they have in a kid's test score right here. Race, 30%. Mother's education, 15. Father's income, 15. Teacher, 10. A great teacher only has 10% of the variance in a test score, but a poor teacher has none, 0. And since we control, what we're doing is we're isolating the teacher's value added, their effect. But we use this to calculate the performance, what a kid's test score should be in terms of what their projected score is. And we always assume the 10 for the teacher. All right, the district makes 5%, school 5, grade 5, age 5, gender, and previous test score 5. Now, how do we work this into an algorithm? So this is how it goes. Again, teachers are 10%, so we got to work those teachers. If we don't get that 10%, kids not going to make growth. So we do a regression equation like I just showed you, and then we do an algorithm. So here it is. Third grade math EOG has 180 questions. So the total raw score that any kid could achieve would be 180. Question is, what score out of 180 would represent a year's growth for any individual kid? This is not a group thing. This is an individual kid. Every kid has a growth score. And we're trying to get a teacher to have 85% of her kids in her room meet their individual growth score, not a group score, that individual kid's score. And then in the building, we're trying to get 85% of our teachers to have growth in there and with their kids. So question is out of 180 possible points, 180 questions, what raw score on that test, on that third grade math EOG, would show a year's growth for a kid? But we have to go to the kid. So here's an actual kid. Jamar is a third grade student in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. His dependent variables are: he's black, he gets 20 out of 30 points. If he's white, he'd get 30 out of 30. This is not racial. This is from historic test data. If he's Hispanic, he'd get 15 in his algorithm. All right. His mother has less than a high school diploma. That's 5 out of 15. If she had beyond a 4-year degree, that would be 15. He has no father in the home, so that would be 0 out of 15. Father's income in excess of 150 would be 15. We know all this stuff from the demographics that we collect from kids. We know this stuff. Now, a little background. The race part is we spurted out under historical. Mother's education matters because mothers are the ones who do lap time with kids. They're the one that sit and read with them. Father's income matters in that mom can stay at home if dad makes enough money. That's why those are so strong. All right. Teacher is 10. CMS is a high wealth district, 5. If it was a low wealth district like Robinson, it would be 2. However, Billingsville Elementary was a takeover school. That's a 0. If it'd been a high growth school, it'd be 5. Grade 5, he's not a repeater. So he gets 5. If he was a repeater, he'd get none. Age, he gets 3 points out of 5 because he's 9 years old and was developmentally late. Even though he didn't fail, he didn't start school, so he's a year behind his group. So he gets 3 out of 5. Gender, this is a math test, so he gets 5. Female would get 4 during the difference in math, but now it'd be opposite if it was a reading test. Previous test scores too, he was not on grade level due to according to M class coming out of 2nd grade. So his equation looks like this. We add all of his points in his algorithm together: 20 plus 5 plus 0, 10 for his teacher, 5, 0, 5, 3, 5, 2, 55. He's got to get 55% of the 180 questions right to show a year's growth. And so his raw score, he's got to score 99. That's how EWAS works. That's how the sausage is made, right there. We control for everything except the teacher. So what you have to be able to say to teachers is, growth scores are individual to the kid according to their demographic dependent variables. Every kid has the same shot at making growth. However, you don't have the same capability with high, medium, and low kids. We've got to work on you. Changing the kids we give you is not the solution. We got to change you. If you have gaps where what we showed yesterday, you're really good with the high ones or really good with the low ones, but the middle ones are opposite. We got to work on you. Changing the kids won't change that. Every kid has the same opportunity to make growth. See, teachers tend to want to blame the kids. This model shows it's not the kids, folks. Again, this is real people talk. These are those critical conversations that are really hard that LS folks have to have. It's you. It's not them. They all have the same opportunity because their algorithm is personal to them. But you aren't as good with every group of kids. And that's why we've got to do that professional development. That's why the PLC system is the heart of schools' instructional program, the pods and the pairs. But again, folks, we have to have these critical conversations. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. We teach kids. If you can't teach kids, we can't use you. We can do everything we can to improve you, but you can't blame the victim. You can't say it's the kid's fault. You gave me this kid's. They all have the same opportunity to make growth. Now, how high they are is determined on who we get. We fully agree. We're not saying that because you didn't move a kid from 45 to 65 that you're a bad teacher. What we're talking about is if your kids don't make growth, you're not meeting the standard that we have to require in our business. This is adult stuff, isn't it? This is hard stuff. This is grown people. This is grown people problems. Because you're talking about folks' livelihood, feeding their families, keeping a roof over their head. This is hard. This is really hard. But your job is not to provide jobs. We're not employment agencies. We teach kids. Performance. We can't just warehouse them every day. Andrew Masseri was one of my students up at the Statesville branch. The years that I taught between Charlotte and Statesville. Before we closed Statesville down and repurposed Charlotte, we used to have two centers here in the Piedmont and in the Metrolina area. And we kept them full all the time. The facility in Statesville was wonderful, a lot better than the Charlotte facility. It was an actual real classroom building. It was great. One of my students there was Andrew Masseri. Andrew is head of school over here at Pine Lake Preps Charter School. They claim to be in Davidson. They're not. They're just across the county line in Mount Morn. But Davidson sounds a lot more elite, so they claim to be in Davidson. But when he was my student, he was not head of school. And we did a drill down, and he was talking about, we don't have any gaps in our academics. I said, well, Andrew, because you only take kids that are on grade level, that doesn't mean anything. That's just about who you got. What do you do with them? We drilled down. What we found was they were just warehouse. The longer they stayed, the dumber they got at Pine Lake Prep. That's a true story. He's out of school now, and they are performing because he learned that you can't blame the kids, and you can't take credit for kids. If you got all kids that are above grade level, you can't take credit for that. They walked in that way. It's what you do with them after that matters. And getting teachers to see it doesn't matter what level of kids we have. We can still grow them because they're not saying that Jamar's got to score 160 out of 180. He's only got to score 99 because of his demographic circumstances. We take them where they are. We love them where they are. We can't fall into that trap of blaming them for the circumstance that they came from. We saw that they're 15 points above the state average on economically disadvantaged. We can't blame them. It's not like they all quit their job. Second grade kids quit their job and stayed at home and went on the unemployment roll. That's not their fault. It's not their fault. We take whoever, that's what we do in public school. We take whoever shows up. And we can't hold teachers accountable that low one showed up, but we can hold them accountable that we grow that low key. A year's growth. We can hold them accountable for that. We need to. We got to. It doesn't matter that the playing field is unlevel against us. We still have to win. We still have to have kids achieve. They still have to learn. That's enough of my soapbox. But this is the crux of this is the crux of your academic program that we've talked about today. Thoughts? Let's go around the room as we close this segment. Around the room. Beth, what do you think about EVOS? What do you think about growth? What do you think about what we've talked about this morning about the power of PLC feeding this? And this is how we get our teachers better. We grow them into the teachers that we need them to be, understanding that it's not a kid problem. It's a teacher problem.
Which is my boss's philosophy all the time. He constantly reminds us that it's not a kid problem, it's an adult problem. And I'm living this right now in the fact that I'm coaching content teachers within the buildings to run PLCs, and just sat for 4 hours on Friday with 2 content teachers at one school. And we went through the K2 summative data, and we went through every priority standard in math in kindergarten through 2nd grade and talked about the depth of the standard, and that the data showing that their teachers are struggling with certain standards. We need to build their capacity with that standard. We need to talk about it in PLCs. And they were really surprised when we started looking at some of the standards, and they're like, oh, wait, that says and not or. And I said, yes. So they're like, in other words, if the student's going to be proficient at that standard, they have to be able to do both of those things within the standard. And I said, yes, absolutely. So even the content teachers learned some things about the depths of the standards by us sitting there having those conversations. And I did it on Thursday with a content teacher at a different school. But I said, we've got to make sure they're not doing surface. So, I 100% agree with the fact that if we want to see growth, we have to make sure our teachers have the capacity to understand their standards and the level of the depth of the standard that the student has to be able to perform in order to say that they've mastered it. I think that EVOS is great data if teachers would accept it as constructive for them to see that.
Formative rather than summative.
Exactly, because we went over our data guru in our district went to one school one year and sat and talked about with the teachers, your EVOS shows you're great with these students, you're great with these students. And the teachers were leaving the meeting in tears because they were taking it as criticism.
And evaluation.
Right. And they weren't looking at it as, okay, so I can grow these high ones and I can grow these middle ones, but I'm not, or the low ones, but I'm not growing my middle ones. So what could I be doing differently? They didn't look at it as a way to build. But I think to some degree, when principals are doing evaluations with teachers, I know from my standpoint, I didn't always get, this is what you could do to go from this level to this level.
Mm-hmm.
And I wished I had, because that would have been growing me as a teacher. Instead, it was summative and it was over and done. So it wasn't, and so I sit there and I'm looking at this stuff from a different lens now than what I did when I was in the classroom, and looking at it thinking, gosh, I wish I would have understood that a little bit better as a classroom teacher, because that would have grown me.
Right.
So, I think that the EVOS data can be great. I love the fact that the state is really starting to realize that they need to be looking at growth as a huge factor, and not just if they're a level 3, 4, or 5.
Mm-hmm. That's who you got.
Important, but if they're not going to get to that if we can't grow them.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Right. And I do agree with you, Beth, on that. Like, classroom teachers really need to understand this EVOS and like what it means. And you need administrators who can drill this down to them so that they can understand, because I think problem with where I left from. Teachers don't understand what this EVOS data means. They're just looking for whether or not their kids exceeded growth or met growth. Like, they're not looking at all the things that are factored into the EVOS data. And I really don't think that there are administrators at my school who can explain this to teachers in a manner in which they understand and that they can really grow.
Well,
From
and the other part is most teachers look at their EVOS data to just see if they're blue or green.
right,
And,
exactly.
you know, if I'm blue, then I might get one of those checks.
Right, yep.
You
Yeah,
know, but they
yeah,
don't really
that's
understand
summative.
it fully.
Yep.
Mhm.
Exactly. They're not using it. EVOS was never designed to be a formative, a summative evaluation system. It was designed to be formative to help you grow your deficiencies. But Siobhan is exactly right. They've got to understand it first. That's been my experience. Now, as a person, a two-person team, I do the calculus, and I took another fellow with me, and we would go out and work. You know, we do work in school districts all the time. I did central office in Thomasville City. We did a 5 event PD for them for their new APs this spring. We take a low wealth district somewhere or two every year, and we go out and do PD with them to try. You know, that's part of our mission of service. We go out and do that, and so I do EVOS, but I do the calculus that you just saw. I do the calculus part. And I explain it a little bit better than I did with y'all, but I know y'all know it. So I don't have to explain what a linear regression is with y'all or analysis of variance. I have to explain all that stuff. But we go out and work with schools and teachers. And what we find is if you can get them to understand that part of it, then they begin to see the value in it, and they begin to see that, oh, that's why they're trying to grow me in my PLCs. And this is what I should be doing in my PLCs. I should use this as a way to grow and get better. But too many principals just throw it out there. They don't know themselves. They can't explain it, and they use it as an evaluation tool. And then when they go in to evaluate, they use the sandwich method, which, you know, just infuriates me. If you want somebody to focus on an area of growth, you need to talk to them about that. You don't need to say 17 things that are good and then hide the one thing they need to improve on in the middle like a sandwich. Because they don't hear that one thing that they need to improve on. They hear the 17 good things that you said. They don't, you have the ones that are afraid to have those critical conversations, or you have the ones that just use it punitive. You don't have that. They tend to be one way or the other. We don't have principals that can go in and sit down and explain the model to you, and that it is a formative model to help you improve, so that you can target the groups that you aren't good with in terms of you know, high, middle, or low, and what we can work in PLCs to get you better. That gives us a roadmap to your improvement. But no, we have the group that don't understand it and just hide it, or we have the group that just don't understand it and use it, you know, as a stick, you know, to beat people with one way or the other.
Right. So
They
then you're stuck in a situation like I was, where you have a principal that doesn't understand, but you have a coach that does. And so
Yeah.
it's like we're speaking two different languages when we're in PLCs or when you're in your evaluation with the principal. And so, like, because I'm not evaluative, nobody wanted to hear what I had to say.
Yeah,
Only
exactly.
trying to grow you and make you better, but you heard those 17 great things that the principal said, and you missed those 2 little things that he slid in there, which are the things that I was using
Better
to
that
grow.
actually matter.
Right. So,
Yeah.
And that's if the principal even slides in those things that are
right.
bad.
Because
You
they're so
know,
scared of losing the people that
they
Exactly.
don't even mention, they don't even sandwich them. They just don't even bring them up.
right.
Yeah, they sandwich them at best. They skip them at worst. But most people, and I could be wrong, most people get up every day. Not a lot of people get up every day and say, I think I'll go to work today and be incompetent. Most folks want to grow. Most folks want to improve. You know, they want to hear more than Miss Ari Smith. I'm so old, when I taught high school and public school, we had a Bible teacher, Miss Ari Smith, and we had some real not good kids because they'd closed the local reformatory and sent them over to us. But Miss Smith could find the good in anybody. If nothing else, she'd say he's got pretty eyes. We can't have principals like Miss Smith who are afraid to lose people that only say, the pretty eye stuff that don't really matter, that can't have the critical conversations. I told you when we started, you folks are ahead of the game because you know the instructional side, the EVOS side, you know the coaching piece. Principals don't. You can take what you know. Think about the power that you would have. Like Sarah Newell, who's principal now at A.L. Brown in Kannapolis. Think about the power that you could have because you know the coaching side, you know the side, the real work side. Think about the power that you could have as a school administrator now. I mean, this morning I've been preaching to the choir this morning. That's why I like working with y'all, because y'all are smart. Y'all know, y'all get it, y'all understand it. Y'all know what when I talk about EVOS and coaching and PLCs, y'all are there. Unfortunately, LS folks are not. So what we're saying is take what you know and lead schools that way. Here's an idea. Take what you know, lead schools that way. Now, again, you can't be the one doing that. Again, you have to break it down to PLCs. You can't go stay in rooms all day as a principal. But you know the right stuff to do. It's a different vision of school leadership. I'm telling you, folks, it's a different vision. It's the one that we got to have, whether you're an EDCI person or this is the vision we got to have going forward. This is how we win, by growing kids. We can't compete on the basis of who we got, because we're gonna take everybody, the great unwatched. We're gonna have the Walmart crowd. That's okay. It's what we do with them that matters. That's how you win, is by growing them. It's a different vision of school leadership. It's not about getting out and trying to get all, the country club kids. Everybody can't have them. But you grow the ones you've got. It's a different vision. Jessica, your thoughts this morning.
So that is a major shift that's happening in our county right now. Is our new superintendent that we have is shifting all principals to become those coach leaders in their school buildings, and it is so difficult for some of them because they are so LS minded, and that's what they've always been.
Exactly.
They've never been required to be anything different.
Yes.
So pushing them to become instructional leaders in our buildings.
C&I people rather than LS people. That's why it's a new vision.
It's tough. And the shift that's taking place has been, you can see in our data, it's been a lot of push-pull, a lot of hard conversations. But for just our school individually, we began the opportunity myth and studying that with our teachers and putting them in PLCs. And the breakdown that you just did of EVOS as it relates to the opportunity myth would pair so beautifully with our teachers and help them understand that they do all come to you on it's the same.
It's a level playing field.
It is. And it doesn't matter what their background is. Your job is to grow them when they're there with you. The two pairing together would be, I mean, if you could just come to my school and say that right there. That
You can say it. You could. I'd love to come to St. Paul's. I'd come see. Me and Danny would hook up. I'd love to come. But yes, you can have me come and say it. But it's so much more powerful when you say it. And that's what your superintendent is trying to get your folks to understand is they got to be a new type of leader. But I'd love to come. I do. As I said, we do that.
Well, I will tell you, he is the only reason why I'm sitting in this AP role right now, because he came to me and said, I don't need you there anymore. But you're going to have to go back to school again.
Yeah.
And
but that's why you're here. But the beauty is you already have your doctorate. As soon as you finish this semester, you'll have your license. Off you go. But we need people like you to be principal. That's what I'm talking about. That's why we started this program, and Steve and I started, well, me and Steve started this in 2019 because we saw a need for a different vision. You'd think that we might be eggheads but we're not. But we saw a different vision of what school leadership had to be. We both acknowledged that we weren't these kinds of principals because that was not our training. But that we can't succeed in the modern environment with people, dinosaurs like us. We got to have a different vision. Your superintendent's exactly right. You will not survive as a public school system if you continue to hire LS people like me that have been trained traditionally like me.
Well, I plan on going back and telling my school this.
Yeah,
Don't happen.
absolutely. Corey, South Carolina, y'all do student learning, SLOs, student learning outcomes. Some districts use EBOS, some are using SLOs, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, the only thing I want to touch on was the high school aspect of it being a little different, because with my sophomores, they take an end of course test. And so, you may grow a kid from a 2nd or 3rd grade reading level to a 7th grade reading level. But if they still don't pass the EOC or actually make a C or higher on the EOC, then it doesn't count for your school report card. It doesn't count for
Right.
like that.
That's comparative accountability.
Yeah. And
But-
so having a growth mindset is helpful, but the PLC aspect is even more useful because you need teachers working together to help as many kids, because now it becomes a numbers game of how many kids make the C or higher. And so it's like, yes, growing, some of our ESOL learners or stuff, up there, that's obviously, but it's that middle of the pack, like you talked about earlier, where the teacher is like, how do you deal with that middle of the pack? Because getting them from a 58 to a 71 on the EOC, that's going to be the hugest thing for the school report card. And so, individual growth plans are great, and having the SLOs, we do those. But then it's like the PLC is actually more important, because now you're having teachers saying, okay, we have this many sophomores taking the EOC. Here's how many we're pretty sure are going to pass. Here's how many we're pretty sure are not. And then when you have this huge chunk of 60 to 70% of the kids in the middle, and it's like, how do we work together to get them to that 70 or higher? Because that's what the school's going to be judged on.
Exactly. South Carolina's a little different, but growth matters, and PLCs matter even more. What you find with teachers, and this is an unfortunate, again, this is part of the dark side of the business that we can't go out and say in public. And I showed it yesterday on the EBOS thing. I could show it again, but you remember it. Most teachers are donuts. There's a hole in the middle for the middle kid. Why do you think we have such a big group in the middle? Because most teachers are donuts. They're good on either side, but there's a hole in the middle. They can do the low ones, they can do the high ones, but moving that middle kid.
That's also where we put the most programs.
That's exactly right.
Gifted and talented and all that for the upper ones, and then we have
and we have the supports for the low ones and the supports for the high ones, but we don't do anything for the middle ones. And so it's exactly right. We have donut teachers who, but a lot of that is because of the environment that they're in. That's exactly right. That's why I showed you that one yesterday. That's the most common. Let's revisit that, and we'll end this session. But let's revisit. This is the most common teacher that you will have. This is the teacher A is the most common teacher you will have. And a lot of it is because of what Corey just talked about, is we put our resources at the bottom and the top as schools, and we forget about the middle. And so teacher A is the most common teacher that we find in buildings. There's a hole in the middle. It's like a donut. And there's a reason why. And so what we've got to start doing as school administrators is finding a way to get support to the middle and growing those teachers to work with that middle kid. Because those are the ones that we can get to proficiency. Proficiency does matter. Growth should be the most important thing. But until we can divest ourselves of some of our old notions, or our old LS notions, and get to the C&I smart stuff, we've got to cobble through with proficiency. But eventually, hopefully, the smarter people will take over. That would be you, the CI people, will take over, and we'll understand it's all about growing kids, regardless of who we get. Because we continue to get less and less capable students. I'll use Gaston County as an example. Lincoln Charter School opened up a Denver campus so they could shift students from the west, from their eastern end, the west side of the lake. So opened up more seats. That's going to continue to kill North Gaston. the more capable students will go to Lincoln Charter and leave North Gaston. North Gaston is going to be low performing before long if it's not already there. That's Dale's prediction. Now, Gaston Day has opened up another satellite, so on that end, I believe it's Hunter Huss will get killed on that end that competes with them. They'll get killed. So you're going to get less and less capable students in terms of a comparative accountability, proficiency accountability. And so we're going to have to eventually get to the notion where the CNI smart people to get, convince folks, it's about what we do with them. We're not on a level playing field about who we get. It's about what we do with them that matters. But we're not quite there yet. South Carolina is still struggling. They're a little bit behind North Carolina. South Carolina is ahead in many ways. I love some of the things they're doing personnel-wise now to get teachers and keep them. I love that they're paying for degrees and hours, and I love that they're doing alternative retirement systems to get North Carolina people. I mean, I think they're way ahead on personnel. The problem is they're way behind on this kind of stuff. They're still trying to cling to that proficiency model. Unfortunately, times change. You got to change with them. We need to be in a growth model. That again, proficiency still matters, but eventually we'll get to growth. I love working with you folks because y'all get it. Y'all understand it. Y'all see the model that it has to be. LS folks have a really hard time. Now, I told you, I cheated. I'm married to a CNI lady. She reminds me every day that they know more than us. But it's a different model. It's not something, Gaston's working toward it. As Siobhan said, Jessica said their new superintendent has seen the light and understands what they're working toward here. Power of the PLC, power of growth, all these things. Every teacher needs to understand that you can grow every kid. Folks, this is not hard. It's just different. But you are well equipped because of your backgrounds. Y'all are well equipped to do this new model that focuses on instruction and achievement and outcomes rather than just warehousing them, ball games, events, that kind of stuff. We've got to take on a different focus in our schools. We pretended for 30 years, 31 years. We pretended that achievement mattered, but we only pretended. It's really been about bragging rights and who's had the better kids, what we could do to manipulate. It's not really been about actually teaching and learning. It was more about assessment than teaching and learning, and that's what it's got to be going forward, folks. It's got to be about teaching and learning. To close out this segment, what do they do at John Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in school? We teach kids. And we have to maintain that focus every day, that they're our focus and we teach kids. All right. So let me share my screen. I'm keeping an eye on the time here. Let me share my screen. Close some of this stuff out. So the next time that we're together is Wednesday, August the 30th. So that's not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. And as I said, we'll divide up. We'll know who we got by then. If we just got us, then I'm good. We'll divide up our chapters and our case studies. And when we come back together so that we'll start dividing that, and you can see the things that we'll be covering then. We'll meet from 6 to 8. We normally meet at 7, but we'll start at 6 and in case we run over, but we won't go past 8. Hopefully we won't go too much past 7, but you never know. So I'll just, forewarned is we'll go from 6 to 8, but we won't go past that. So I appreciate you being with me this weekend. I told you I'd get you out early on Sunday. I appreciate you. We've covered our material. I hope you got some value out of it. I hope that you now see what our perspective is this semester. I'll stop beating you up with it now, but this first weekend is all about changing your lens, changing your vision, not to the existing one, but to one that we hope will exist before long. Jessica sounds like they're moving that way. I know they are in Gaston. I know they are there. Because Steve's back there, and that's been their focus, is that, you know, that they're going to change their vision. He talked to me Friday night for 2 hours. It's tough. It's like turning the battleship. That's where we're headed. Anybody have anything for the good of the group before we go? As always, I appreciate you being with me. I enjoy working with you. I hope it's not too boring for you. I'll see you Wednesday week. Everybody have a good interim time here. Thank you for being with us this weekend.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.